Hey everyone, thank you so much for showing up today. We're very excited to be hosting, I think this is our first webinar of 2026, a bit late in the year, but we're getting things started. It's been a bit busy, but we're very excited to be here today with our partners, amazing Quebec-based organization, Glotify, talking about how lean teams can use AI to scale email and content without the burnout, budget, blowing your budget or stress. To give you an idea of who we are, I'm Nihal. I lead growth and marketing here at Cyberimpact, and I'm joined today by Colleen, who's the director of content at Glotify, as well as Will, who's the client partnerships director at Glotify. So very excited to have them both here with me today to talk about, this hot topic that we're all hearing all the time and probably have a ton of questions around. But I think we've got some interesting things to go through today with you. So to kick things off, just wanted to give you an idea of what we'll be talking about over the next 45 minutes. What we'd really like to have you walk away with is ultimately a clear diagnostic of where your systems currently stand, what's working, what's maybe not working, and give you a way to maybe think about your systems as you build a working model, call it a simple, repeatable system that you can implement for your team, regardless of your team size or level of sophistication with your systems. An AI framework on how you can actually create a clear way to produce on-brand and safe content that actually is easy, simple, and doesn't require, a huge technical background to get in place. And we'll also touch on compliance a little bit, something that we're really big on here at Cyberimpact, something we're really pushing even at a broader, say, national level. And so, not always the sexiest topic, but something that is very, very important for us all as Canadian organizations to be aware of. Awesome. So, really why, when Colleen, Will, and I were discussing this presentation, as marketers, as communicators, especially with the talk about AI, our output expectations have really grown, right? So oftentimes you're expected to do more with less, but you don't usually get the buy-in or the resources you need to actually do it, right? So headcount is often a very big blocker for a lot of teams when it comes to scaling their programs. And we think this Sisyphus graphic is a good representation of what it's like trying to argue for more resources every day as a marketer and communicator. But I think the nice thing is there's a way for us to actually build a system that helps us scale without the burnout at the end of the day. And, ultimately the good news is that this really isn't an issue about talent, headcount, or budget, but how do you actually take what you have and add a system on top of it that you can continue to iterate on that can help your team with the goals you have. So these are some interesting stats that we pulled out while we were preparing for this presentation. Something that's interesting, and I'm sure we all, for the most part, have heard this time and time again. A lot of marketing teams and organizations are quite lean, with 78% of teams often having, say, 1 to 3 people. About 60% of B2B marketers are often asked to do more every year, see better results every year with less budget, less resources, and less time to actually achieve what you want to do. And with senior leaders, 63% of CMOs actually lack the budget to execute their plans. Not us, of course. Like, we are very well budgeted, and I get all the budget I need from my team. So, Jeff, if you're listening, I'm very happy. So, and when it comes to, the output that's expected from a lot of teams, especially with all this talk around AI, we're often under pressure to put out more content every day, every month, every quarter, with the same headcount, right? So how do we actually think about tackling this as marketers in 2026? So something that we'd like folks to start thinking about, right, is like, how do we stop ourselves from thinking about how can I, as an individual, possibly do it all? And what is that the right mix? What can humans and AI actually do to partner together and produce this high quality content together? And I'll hand this over to Colleen, who will be talking to us about what every business needs within their organization.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Colleen. I'm Director of Content here at Glotify. I was previously at Hootsuite and Shopify and various B2B roles in my 12-ish years career around content. So topic is something I love talking about, and anybody who's going through the pain of feeling that pressure cooker of more with different tooling, I see you. And it's been an interesting year, I would say, for all of us. So we created this concept of the minimum viable marketing system after thinking about the shared pain points that both of our customers go through, especially those who are operating on solo teams or teams of, say, less than like 3 to 5 people. We know that these teams are on us, and with these lean teams often comes multiple responsibilities, competing ones at that. And we firmly believe that just having this minimum viable marketing system for online marketing is now table stakes, and AI is making it much more feasible for people to do this at scale. And we're seeing that people who implement this system or these best practices are able to move the needle on multiple different challenges all at once. And we'll walk you through a customer case at the end, kind of show this in action. So we found a few patterns in what they were able to adopt. If you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. Okay, organic content and social. This one is really about building awareness for your brand, and this is a really key pillar to your strategy. I'm going to say that everybody here has likely at least 1 or 2 active channels for their business. I see Paige on the call, got a little bit more on her side, with varying degrees, I would say, of content published. And where we've seen in our customers that are on small teams, where we've seen the most success is when they commit to about 2 to 3 posts a week across 2 platforms to begin with at most. And the reason we say 2 to begin with is it's better to start small and really like nail how you're showing up in fewer places, analyzing it, mastering it, taking some of those best practices and then scaling to other channels before really trying to spread yourself too thin and get a hold of the nuances of different social channels, because they are very heavy and ever growing, and there's a lot to learn, and a lot of interesting dynamics with the communities on each channels. For us at Glowtify, for example, right now that channel is LinkedIn, but we're using TikTok as a place more to like experiment with different messaging and see what resonates with the marketing community. So that's what we're doing. And another thing that we're seeing right now is that customers who have already started AEO and GEO on Glowtify are seeing results. And we know that approximately 70% of people use AI chat on their path to purchase. And if you're not being cited for this content, it really poses a risk to people who are. And we launched our GEO feature at Glowtify in February. And as we'll be able to attest, some of our customers are already seeing a lift in their overall organic reach. And this is something that we thought was going to honestly take a little bit longer. But we're very happy to see that the early adopters are seeing results now. And it's not quite as a slow burn as SEO. And finally, one lead capture mechanism. So this one is relatively self-explanatory. Here, it's about you're building awareness, but you also want to bring people into your funnel to nurture that relationship with you. So there are so many different ways that you can do this. Case studies that explain your work with other brands, ebooks, especially ebooks that are original research and data that you own that can be cited in multiple different formats. I believe Cyberimpact recently released one as well. This can be very, very powerful content that you can spread across multiple different channels. And finally, a monthly email cadence, but this one is kind of near to Nahal's heart, so go for it and tell us about the power of a monthly email cadence. Oh, Nahal? Nahal, do you want to talk about email just a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was struggling with my unmute button.
No stress.
There's a new platform for us, so I'm still getting used to where all the buttons are. So apologies for that. Yeah, so I think something that I really like about the way this is framed is a lot of folks will often ask us, for example, well, what is the power of email, right? Like I only have a small list. It's not really something that my team necessarily has time for. But what we like to think about is email really is a key part of your relationship building strategy. So you don't need to be super active. You don't need to be blasting people all the time. The idea is to take the folks that have shown high interest and high intent with what you're offering, keep them in your funnel and kind of keep yourself top of mind at the end of the day. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into how you actually perform over email, but that's a very separate topic and something that we'll probably do a webinar on in the future. But I think thinking about this awareness, consideration, conversion, and nurture, email plays a really significant part in actually keeping people around and having them, either stick around, buy from you more, or just refer you, right? Like something we deal with a lot is we're trying to build our brand presence across Canada. And we see in our list that there's a lot of folks that aren't necessarily Cyberimpact customers yet. But what our email list lets us do is show them why, supporting a Canadian organization, working with a Canadian business is important. And why, in many ways, we are one of the fastest growing email marketing platforms in Canada, right? So quick plug. And it's a great marketing channel that I think is often quite underused by a lot of organizations.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, so the content execution gap, we've already talked about the challenge that is confronting most people in varying ways, this volume piece. I know it can feel so overwhelming, but we also know that great content built at scale is the way in for getting awareness for your brand. So whether you're looking to acquire new customers, hire great talent, get recognition for initiatives for your government agency, or a department in your school, etc. There's a ton of content to be produced for various different initiatives. And then, you're looking at, okay, so I've got social, I've got blog, I've got email, employment. I'm a 2-person team. Like, where do I even begin? I'm overwhelmed. And as we had mentioned before, every person here is confronted with this, like, wish that either they wish they were doing more. And as I mentioned, that in the last 12 years working in content, there's always been a sense of like, the more, but the ease of AI is making that wish become a new, very tangible sense of pressure for marketers or people who are managing marketing within the organization. So 3 places that they get stuck is kind of that I think are feeding into this feeling of overwhelm is no time. Content is taking a little bit too long to produce. It requires too much effort for a specific channel because channels need maybe their own treatment for everything from image sizing to actually, crafting the right headline that's going to perform on that channel. And then it gets stuck in revisions and then maybe becomes irrelevant. If anybody's worked in social specifically and they wanted to hop on a trend on a social channel and then it got held up in revisions and then you missed the boat and then kind of it's over. So that revision, crunching that revision cycle can be really, really integral to actually having velocity for your content. I've been in that boat and I've also been the person who's held things up. So sorry, and also I see you. Then, of course, there's the lack of resources piece. So maybe there's no dedicated content producer on your team. So you're just managing agencies or freelancers. You're not really sure where to start. And lastly, the lack of confidence in AI output. You might be right now spending time fighting with an AI tool that you're like, why aren't you understanding me? Or maybe you're trying to overcome AI hesitation at the organizational level because of restrictions in your industry or in your business. And that's limiting your ability to adopt tooling to be able to then kind of, meet all the demands for your content production cycle. Okay, this is my must-have a starter pack for just unfrustrating AI outputs and delivery, regardless of where you stand. So whatever tool you use, whatever you've implemented thus far, I would say that having these 4 things are essential. One being established brand guidelines, but table stakes. This doesn't need to be fancy, by the way. It can be on a Google Doc. That just has your style guide outline, tone of voice, brand promise, values, content themes in one spot. And this can serve as the foundation of how you message and so on. Next is a list of industry guardrails that are really clearly outlined. This one varies really depending on your industry as well. It might be like if you're in manufacturing, you might have and want to ensure all imagery has safety equipment if you're showing employer brand. Another one might be following Canada's FDA rules if you're in healthcare, or maybe just like a word or phrase that your CEO hates and gets mad every time that they see you. So there's also that. And this one brings me to business goals. So once you've got your goals set up, this is very, very, very essential. So just to ensure that whatever you are producing is working for a very specific marketing outcome related to your business goals. AI is really good at taking explicit direction. So just tell it. So if you're saying we're trying to penetrate a new market in Canada where we have no awareness, propose some post ideas that resonate with Gen Z. Very, very instructional, directive, telling where to look. Or another note is, we need to increase our revenue and marketing is an untapped lever. Let's try to convert more of our blog readers into customers with a great offer. Help me build that out. And lastly, a prompting framework that you cannot live without. I personally, for some of my strategy work, outside of say the marketing workflow that I have, but just broader business strategy, I really rely heavily on Risen. So it's role, input, steps, expectations, and novelty. I can drop it in the chat afterwards so you can take a look. But essentially, who are you? What are you trying to do? Input, important context documents, steps, exactly how you would exactly how you would go through the steps yourself, expectations, what you want the output to be, and novelty is something new that the AI can recommend as well within this workflow. Okay, lastly, and here's where things can get interesting when you have your foundation set in place and where we're seeing our customers be able to scale with Glowify. So you kind of move from being in a content creation mindset, but creating a system that reframes the problem from, okay, how am I going to produce all of this, to how will what we're doing move the needle on our business goals? So in Glowify, for example, you get strategy guidance throughout the entire process of building a piece of content. And this is kind of like the first thing that your AI should be asking you is, what are you trying to achieve? What goal are you working towards? And this means that you don't have to spend time fighting with the AI, as I was mentioning, but you can go from brief to actual content outputs, draft to review in minutes. It's very quickly when you've got the right system. And since DNA is also understood, when you have your business DNA baked in and brand DNA and brand guidelines baked into the system that you're using, your iterations and approvals are much faster because those guardrails that I was talking about as well, they're already baked in, and you get to the last mile of approval much faster, which honestly we all want. Okay, and lastly, I want to talk to you just a little bit about the emphasis on strategy and AI as a strategy partner, not just an output partner. So we did an investigation into all of the usage so far on Glowify this year, and we found that 3 in 5 of interactions on Glowify with our chat are strategy related anyway. People are asking, what channel should I post this on? Based on what I'm trying to do, what type of content approach should I take? So we're seeing that there's a real clear need for support on distribution, not just creation. So when you have that system in place, the AI knows exactly what to recommend. It has all the context in place for what you're actually trying to drive an outcome for. Average time elapsed also for ideating on a piece of content to scheduling it and having it live is 2 days, which is pretty incredible, because we know that a lot of people could be caught on Trello boards and spreadsheets for much longer than that. And we also know that the average number of iterations before post is 14. So what's special about this is that context is kept with every iteration and there are no expired tokens here. Oh, tell me, awesome. Okay. So when it comes to building your consideration engine, one thing that we found is that in talking to so many customers at Glowify, this is usually the thing that will go first. And when it comes to building out your consideration, whether it's a campaign to really educate your prospects on a specific topic, or if you're sharing guidelines on how to use your product, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, this stage of the funnel gets dumped, and then all of a sudden you are relying way too much on conversion focused content where you're just like promoting yourself. And consideration content, I spoke to one of our customers at a baseball manufacturer here in Quebec yesterday, and she and her team have produced over 65 pieces of content that were educational focused in the last 6 weeks. that were very, very focused on how to use their product and, you know, building brand love through nurturing and educating in the long term, rather than, you know, waiting for high season and peak season and expecting people to convert more over time. So this piece can really, having a system in place for this content bucket, as I said, that usually gets ditched to the side when you get busy, can be a massive unlock. So you're not putting so much pressure on those promotional seasons to convert when, you know, you haven't taken everybody out on a date before you're asking for their hand in marriage, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the interesting piece about the consideration and, say, the old way of building a funnel, right? We used to have the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, but Amanda Natvidad or Spark, really cool. It's a really cool team. And one of the concepts they talk about is a zero-click marketing, evolution of modern marketing channels. Oftentimes people are engaging or interacting with your brand, but somewhat passively, right? So the old days of very direct, strict attribution. Oh, I posted an article, someone clicked through to my article, is clean nowadays. So to Colin's point here, really actually thinking about how do you invest not just in trying to get people to convert, but actually educating them and letting them build that level of trust with you is pretty critical, I think, to your overall success as a marketing function, which, you know, I think feeds really nicely into what we try to talk about a lot at Cyberimpact, which is email marketing. You know, it is something that every year we hear the same thing: email's dead. No one likes email, but I like to think about it more through the lens of everyone has a channel they prefer. And for a pretty big chunk of your audience base, that channel continues to be email, right? And it's email generally plays this tail end role of you've brought people in, you've educated them. Now, once they're in, what are all the things you can do to actually get them to take action on what you want? So, you know, speaking to this point around why email can be part of the anchor to your system is that organic, social, all these channels for distribution are a big part of your brand building, awareness building, and credibility building play, while email actually gives you the opportunity to build upon that and own this relationship with your audience. So I'm sure, you know, these are very common stats we see all the time when it comes to email. Oftentimes you see this 36 or 42, like the number changes every year, return for every $1 spent on email marketing. This is especially true nowadays where the cost of acquisition continues to grow every year. I think in the past 5 years, it's gone up 3x, for example. And, you know, we see it all the time, even in our own marketing. Oftentimes, when you actually take the time to also segment your content, you're going to see higher open rates and better email performance overall, because you're just delivering more relevant, personalized content. And when it comes to the actual conversion layer, all this personalization and the additional effort you put into building those systems will ultimately lead to just outsized returns on the other side. So often how we like to think about it is social ads, you know, these distribution channels often let you reach new audiences, are a big part of helping you build community and an audience that you can continue to communicate with. It's in some ways the start of your nurture funnel, but, you know, a big part of it too is it's very algorithmic, and it's algorithmic discovery. So they help you find the right people who might be interested in what you're trying to get out there. The value where that email tends to provide for any organization is that you actually own this relationship, especially in Canada, where our consent laws and data privacy laws are pretty strict. When someone agrees to join your list, that's a very high intent signal, right? They've liked what you've put out, they're interested in learning more, and now you have that direct line to this audience member. Algorithm proof delivery, you know, nowadays with AI and the AI filters, this is a debatable, maybe getting more and more debatable, but for the most part, it is still a direct line to your audience. And there's a very clear path to like an attributable ROI, depending on, you know, your organization, obviously. For example, if you aren't necessarily selling a product, but your role and your job is essentially to just educate folks, I think engagement through email is a very strong way that you can actually still show ROI and value within your organization. And something that we often hear from our customers, for example, is, oh, like there's so many things I can do with email. Where do we start? And I think especially when it comes to building systems, it's easy to get overwhelmed and think you need to go super complex. Let me set up 5, 10 different personalized automated flows. But we like to think, start small, figure out where you can extract the most value for yourself while providing more value for your audience, and go from there. So, for example, when you think about a single welcome sequence, there's a lot of organizations that don't even have a welcome sequence in place, which, that is ultimately your first touch point with your audience. So why not start there? To kind of just give you an idea of what we see as, say, the anatomy of a standard welcome sequence, and this can vary. I would highly recommend adapting it to your specific use case. But you can think about it, when someone signs up for your list, you want to welcome them in and deliver some type of value. Often this is setting expectations for anything else that they can expect to come their way. Day 2, day 3, it can be somewhere around there. Actually just introducing yourself, your organization, what you stand for. And oftentimes I think leaning into your expertise is very underrated as a relationship building tactic, right? I think especially nowadays with AI as well, people are looking to connect with people, right? So how do you actually get yourself, members of your team, your founders, the heads of your organizations as part of that welcome sequence, I think is like a very important part of how you deliver value. Day 5, day 6, this can just be you adding on to the value that your org can add to this person that signed up. And then finally, once got a chance to know you, you're not just going to ask them to marry you right away. A little bit, give them your best side, and then ask them to do something that you'd like them to do. So something that's really interesting about sequences, and whenever we do our conferences and webinars as well, is we like to encourage organizations to think about systems, right? Where we're often quite overwhelmed. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the idea of sending one-off campaigns. When you actually build an email system that works with the rest of your marketing stack, essentially you get this automated nurture, automated nurture that you can use. So talking about like prioritizing, not every sequence is worth building day 1. There's a ton of different flows you can set up, whether that's within any other email tool that you're using. But depending on your industry, just start where the leverage is highest for you and your team. Here's a little graph. I won't necessarily walk through this entire thing because it's a lot, but when you get the presentation slides, you can take a look just in terms of, what we're seeing from our clients, what Colleen's team's seeing from theirs. These are often some of the key flows or sequences that you can prioritize that often drive, say, 60, 70% of the results, while the other 30% can be stuff that you play around with that works specifically for the audience, right? And you're really the only folks that will know your audience to that level. And once again, the fun stuff, I think, especially when it comes to email, but in general, communicating and marketing at large, there is this desire for us to all want to move very fast, right? But it is possible to move fast while still keeping compliance at the core of everything we do. Once again, especially operating in Canada and Quebec specifically. These are 2 legislations that do affect us all as marketers, regardless of where you're based. So CASL, being the core legislation that's been put in place to protect you as a business, it protects your deliverability and your relationship with your audience, but it's also there to protect the person on the other side, right? And it's easy to maybe view this as a blocker or red tape, but ultimately with email being such an intimate channel, you ultimately do just want people that want to be there, right? Like growing your list for the sake of it is no longer a requirement and shouldn't really be your goal. What you really want is a high quality list of people that actually want to hear from you, which I think these frameworks give us a bit of guidelines and pushback. For example, if you ever run into, say, leadership conversations where they're like, why isn't our list, 3 times the size, without any rationale behind it? And within Quebec, we do have Law 25, which I'd say is the most robust privacy law in Canada at this point. Very much aligns us with some of the standards across the pond in the EU, and is probably something, I think that's going to become even more important for the rest of Canada moving forward with everything going on in the world, at large. So something that's nice about Cyberimpact and with our integration with Glotify as well is that most of what you need for maintaining compliance here is systematized. So we have automated ways for you to ensure compliance, track and log all your compliance requirements. So, if you are ever faced with a PIA audit or just an internal request for consent data, you have that all tracked very easily. And, I think thinking about how we can scale without sacrificing compliance or even just like structure within our marketing campaigns, I think this is very interesting for all marketers and communicators, right? What is this framework that we can use when thinking about these systems? And I think Will be a great person to talk about how you can go from idea to launch in a fraction of the time.
Yeah, I think that's well said. If we move on to the full systems on the next slide, what you're even before talking about any of these points, what's really, really important, and you're noticing this across everything that, Colleen and Nell, you've been speaking about at the beginning. If you want to use any kind of AI, especially if you're trying to build a full AI system for your marketing, you need to first make sure that the system really understands your brand and the singularities of your brand or of your company. Once that is done, that is when you could actually move forward with these next steps, right? So if you're looking at a full AI system, what should the ideal marketing flow look like? Step number one is obviously that you want to be able to leverage the system to strategize and plan. So either like you give it your own strategies and it will help you plan around it, or on the other flip side, you don't really know where you want to go with your marketing. You're looking for an idea of your next marketing strategy, your next marketing plan. Well, your full system should help you out with that. Once the strategy and the plan is identified, let's say for a month's worth of content, for example, then you can move on to the step two, which is that you're going to let the AI create for you and with you. So you're going to let the AI draft these blogs, your social media posts, and all of the email content that you can inject into your system afterwards. Once the AI creates the content, it's super important that you're seeing this in step three, that you let the human come back into the loop. And this is where you need to review the tone, the accuracy of the content, of course, the compliance, but even though like Nihal was saying it, like these systems are really good already in place at understanding which compliance and which guidelines you need to respect. But it's really, really important that you review whichever or whatever content the AI generated. Once you're like, okay, it's good to go, now it's time to schedule it. In an ideal world, your full system is going to know your industry, is going to know your target market, your audience, your ICP, who you're sending these emails to, who you're targeting with your social media posts. And it's going to propose to you the ideal times for when you should actually be scheduling and posting this content. I was going to say for, but like at what ideal time is that for? So then you want to schedule that content. And then once it's sent out, you obviously want to send it, but track how is it performing? Once the campaign goes live, it's like, what's my open rate? What's the click rates? What's the social media engagement that I'm getting? All of that should be tracked. Obviously, you want to track it because I'm assuming that you're curious as a human in the loop. But what's awesome about AI nowadays is that it's actually going to be tracking it for you. And then it's going to inject that into step number three, which is optimization. So you want to optimize this content. You want to learn what is working, what is not working, but you also want your AI marketing system to learn what is working and what is not working. So that's the beauty about step number 6. And why is that so important? Because it goes back to step number 1. The next strategy that you're going to put in place, you need to make sure that it's data back. And that's why step number 6 is super, super important. Well, actually, here's a case study that we're putting up on screen right now. This company is called Bisset. It's a client, it's a user that we have shared between Glotify and Cyberimpact. I love this tagline because it's true for everybody here on the call today. Every company and human at that company has a story worth telling. Before AI, though, we were often limited in terms of like, how much of the story can we tell and how many people can we actually reach? But now with AI and when having the right marketing systems in place, team size is not a deciding factor anymore. So Bisset, they went from having like literally nobody and no resources when it came to their marketing, and their presence was really scattered everywhere online, which sucks because like they have a great presence in person. Like in the Lanaudière area here in Quebec, everybody kind of knew them. Well, a good amount of people knew them, right? So they went from that scattered presence to now being able to create content for their brand, perfectly on brand every week. They accelerated brand awareness in like key local markets for them, as much on the residential and commercial side. And they launched their first ever newsletter with Cyberimpact and Glotify. And literally, like, this was amazing. Like, first day they send out a newsletter, boom, they get a new leader right away. So that was like a huge aha moment. And on the next slide here, what you're going to see is literally just kind of like a nice view of like, what does Bisset actually look like now online? Like, look at their building. They're amazing in person, right? But then they're now being able to reflect that online as well. So just some quick stats, like over the past 3 months, what they were able to do is they had 263 pieces of content that they were able to publish across emails, socials, ads, and for all of their SEO and GEO content. Every time they launch a new newsletter, they're having all of this marketing campaign and additional content around it. So it's generating new clusters of leads every time. They're also now showing up across ChatGPT and Gemini, which is important, of course, nowadays. And they're recruiting much, much, much faster because they're much more known in the area. Cool. So the full system, in my opinion, in our opinion, it's a 90-day roadmap. So where you want to start in day 1 to 30 is that obviously you want to launch this welcome sequence like Nahal was explaining previously, and you want to make sure it's automated, of course. You want your business DNA to be captured in your AI marketing system. So that, again, like I was saying, I was mentioning before, you want to make sure that this AI marketing system knows everything about you, your competitors, your landscape. And then from there, you want to start publishing your first ever posts. You want to make sure that you have a lead capture page, right? And then also, of course, your consent and unsubscribe flows that are also verified and in place. For then the next, I call it the medium section, the mid-tier section, which is your 30 to 60 day. This is where you really want to start building like the content engine. So this is where you're getting monthly email cadences that are running 2-3 social media posts that are going out on a weekly basis. You're going to have a second cadence that's going to go live, maybe like a re-engagement sequence or like a post-purchase sequence. And then you're also going to want to start segmenting your audiences. It could be by type, by industry, by customer segment, you name it. And then day 60 to 90 is like, to me, it's the gravy. This is where you're literally just reviewing open click data. You're going to tune your subject lines. You're going to expand, obviously, the best performing flows. But obviously, anything that's not working, like kill it. Don't waste your time with that. Cool. So in the end, what you're getting is the system that is now in place. You're getting more time for the fun stuff. Everything is fun, but obviously the main goal is for you to be able to focus on what's really, really fun for you. Okay. So what you're walking away with right now, or what you should be walking away with, I've been speaking too much French this morning. I'm having a hard time with my English here. Is that you want to act on these 3 things as your first priority. Number 1, you want to audit your current workflow for compressible time. Like, where could you go and save that time? So use the 3-question framework. So find the tasks that are eating the most time, right? It sounds easy, but when you actually sit down and do it, that's when you really, really figure it out, right? And then identify which email automation and AI could take that stuff off your plate month to month. Then you want to build out the minimal viable marketing system that Colleen introduced us at the beginning. So 1 email per month, 2-3 social media posts, per week, 1 lead capture mechanism in place minimum. That's really going to be like the blueprint or the skeleton. You really want to start there, measure it, build that compounding effect, that momentum. We know what that momentum feels like, right? I feel like the drawing on the top right describes it well, right? And you're not starting from scratch every time. And then 3, make compliance automatic and not manual, right? Like Nahal talked about it really, really well before. You want to stop managing CASL and Law 25 like by hand and going back to it with the nitty gritty. It's, first of all, super annoying, right? But it's also really important to follow. So you want to choose the right tools that are going to allow you to handle consent, unsubscribing, the list hygiene for you. So that compliance becomes, yes, a true asset, but really just not that boring and annoying thing that you're going to keep doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And, I think, we're a fan of frameworks. I also like this idea of setting time aside to actually continuously audit your workflows.
Yeah.
I think, marketing ops, especially in leaner teams, is often not the top priority. But when you actually think about efficiency as a team, that's usually where you can eke out a bit more performance, right, from your team, and also just reduce the headaches that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, webinars, for example, we noticed that it was taking us a long time to actually plan, produce, and orchestrate our webinars. We found a tool that helped us do it better, and now we're kind of set up to actually do them more consistently with less headache for our team, right? So obviously not an example using Glodify, but I do think we were only able to get to that conclusion by actually sitting down, looking at where our flows were broken, and adjust things from there, right?
Yeah.
So
I totally agree with that. Like that regular cadence, because at the same time where our workflows are getting broken, the technology for different ways to fix it is increasing at warp speed. And some people on your team might have insights for what you could solve with AI as a team, whether it is to increase your efficiency from, a sales team to a customer team handoff, or just any way to like ingest more context into all of your outputs and what you're doing. There's something new launching every day, every week, every minute. So I love that idea to set up a regular kind of workflow review cadence to keep things as efficient as possible across the whole business.
yeah, absolutely. And, I think that was a very insightful and, I learned a lot. So thank you, Colleen and Will, for, taking the time to chat with us today. That's about it for our webinar at this time. Happy to answer any questions folks have. For anyone that is interested in giving Cyberimpact a try, if you aren't a Cyberimpact customer yet, we'd be more than happy to show you how you can get that done. Same with Glotify, very cool tool. I got to see it for the first time in action about a month ago, and a lot of folks at the conference we were at were also very interested by it. I was a little jealous because our demo wasn't as interactive, but you can always reach out to Will and Colleen if you have any questions, and we'll be following up with the slides and anything else that you might need. So, well, once again, thank you, everyone. We'll give you back 15 minutes or so, but feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn. Send us an email if you have any questions. And once again, thank you so much for showing up to our first webinar of the year. And we hope to see you on any future ones we do as well. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Colleen. And thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.